The desert storm had a voice that night, howling, shrieking, tearing at the canyons like an angry god. Lightning forked across the Arizona sky, splintering the darkness into shards of white. And crawling through that chaos was a young Apache woman, her hands bloodied, her hair tangled with sand and rain, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her name was Ayana, once called Running Doe by her people, swiftest among her tribe, fearless in the hunt, a woman whose laughter once echoed through the valleys like the call of an eagle. But that was before the raid, before the explosion that took both her legs and left her with nothing but scars and silence. The tribe had carried her for 2 days after that fateful battle, their faces hard, their words few. The medicine man said her spirit was strong, but her body was no longer fit for the journey of warriors. Her uncle, the tribe's war leader, looked down at her with a kind of sorrow that felt colder than hate. A warrior who cannot walk, he said, voice like dry stone, cannot fight. A hunter who cannot chase brings only hunger. The spirits will care for you now. They left her at the edge of the desert, half conscious, wrapped in a torn blanket, with only the wind to keep her company. She called out to them, begged them not to go, but her words were lost in the thunder. By the time she realized they weren't coming back, she was already too weak to cry. The rain turned the sand to mud, and she began to crawl. Each pull of her arms was agony, her knees scraped raw, her body trembling. But she refused to stop. She had been abandoned, yes, but she would not be useless. Not yet. Her fingers dug into the earth, dragging her forward inch by inch. The smell of wet sage and blood mixed in her nose. Her heart beat with the rhythm of survival, the same rhythm her ancestors had carried through centuries of storms and wars. "I will not die here," she whispered in Apache, her voice cracking. "The earth will remember my steps, even if I have none." Hours turned into days. The storm passed, leaving behind a silence that was somehow crueler. The desert returned to its golden stillness, wide, endless, uncaring. Ayana's lips cracked, her throat burned, her body felt hollow. When she collapsed beneath a mesquite tree, she was barely breathing. Her eyes fluttered open just long enough to see the sky burning orange with dawn. A single vulture circled above, patient and certain. Her mind drifted. She saw flashes, her mother weaving by the fire, her brother laughing as they raced through the sagebrush, her uncle's cold eyes as he turned away. The memories hurt worse than the pain in her body. Then through the haze of death and dust, she heard something. Wheels. The faint creak of wagon wheels, the steady clop of hooves. At first she thought it was a dream, a trick of her dying mind. But then the shadow of a man fell over her face, and the scent of tobacco and horse sweat filled her lungs. "Sweet Lord," a voice murmured. She forced her eyes open. Standing above her was a tall, broad-shouldered man, dressed in worn denim and a wide-brimmed hat. His skin was tanned from the sun, his beard flecked with gray. He looked down at her as if unsure whether she was alive or ghost. "Hey now," he said softly, crouching beside her. "You're still breathing, ain't you?" Her lips moved, but no sound came. She tried again, her voice nothing more than a whisper. "Water?" He fumbled at his belt, pulling free a dented canteen. "Here, easy now." He lifted her head gently, letting her drink. The water was warm and tasted of metal, but it was the sweetest thing she had ever known. When she tried to drink too fast, he pulled it back. "Slow," he said. "Ain't no rush. You're safe." The word meant nothing to her anymore, but something in his tone made her want to believe it. The man's name was Samuel Brody, a widowed farmer who lived alone on a patch of stubborn land near the canyon rim. He'd been on his way back from town with a cart of hay and supplies when he saw her. What he thought at first was a dead animal in the dirt, but when he'd realized it was a woman, broken and bleeding, something inside him shifted. He hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks. The silence of his farm was all he'd known since his wife, Clara, passed 5 years before. He'd buried her beneath a lone cottonwood tree and promised himself never to care again. Caring only brought pain, but now looking at this woman, skin torn, hair matted, spirit somehow still alive, he felt that old ache in his chest stir again. "You hang on now," he said, wrapping her gently in his coat. Ain't no one dying out here today, not while I can help it. He lifted her into his wagon, careful not to jostle her stumps, and drove as fast as the old mule could pull. The road wound through red canyons and open plains, the air thick with dust and heat. Ayanna drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she murmured words he didn't understand, soft syllables in Apache, names maybe, or prayers. Once she reached out weakly and gripped his hand. Samuel didn't pull away. By the time the sun sank behind the mesas, they reached his farmhouse, a small wooden cabin surrounded by a few withered corn stalks and a rusty windmill creaking in the wind. He carried her inside, pushing open the door with his shoulder. The room smelled faintly of wood smoke and loneliness. He laid her on the bed, his late wife's bed, then set to work. He lit a lantern, boiled water, cleaned her wounds with trembling hands. He wasn't a doctor, but he knew what it was to fight for life. When he unwrapped the bloodied cloth around her stumps, his breath caught. The wounds were deep but clean. Someone had tried to care for her once. He washed, rewrapped, and whispered quietly, "You'll live, miss. You just gotta keep wanting to." When he finally sat down by the fire, he realized how long it had been since he'd spoken that much to anyone. He glanced over at her face calm now in sleep, her breathing steady. "Guess it's just you and me, stranger," he said softly. Hours passed. The desert outside grew silent except for the wind. The fire flickered, throwing soft light over the small cabin. The Bible on the table, the tools by the door, the empty chair where his wife used to sit. He hadn't realized how empty it all felt until now. When Ayanna woke, it was morning. The storm had passed, the air smelled of rain and sun-baked clay. She blinked up at the wooden ceiling, confused at first, then turned her head. The man was sitting by the fire, his hat resting on his knee, reading quietly. He looked up when she stirred. "Well," he said, voice gentle, "look who decided to wake up." She tried to sit up, wincing. Where am I?" He stood, moving to her bedside. "My farm. You were half dead out there in the desert. Name's Sam Brody." She looked at him warily, then down at her legs. "Bandaged, clean. You helped me." He nodded. "Reckon it was the right thing to do." A long silence filled the space between them. She studied him, his weathered face, his careful hands, the sadness in his eyes. Finally, she whispered, "Why?" He shrugged, glancing toward the window. "'Cause I know what it's like to be left behind." Ayanna looked away, her throat tight. For the first time since her tribe abandoned her, she felt something other than pain, something small and fragile, like the first green sprout after a wildfire. It was hope. Outside, the sun rose over the red cliffs, casting golden light across the land. Inside, in that quiet cabin, two broken souls began to heal, one from loss and one from abandonment. Neither knew it yet, but their lives had just changed forever.